start with introducing ourselves. So as I said, my name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Director of Client Services for IBT Online. I'm actually based in the UK at the moment, and Samantha Sofici is based in Florida, in Miami, and she is for IBT Online, and she works specifically for Florida exporters, Florida companies, and is your resource there in state. So if you're all ready, I'd like to hand over to Samantha to introduce a little bit some of our guests and hosts. Samantha?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. I'm really excited about it. So we have these great partners in Florida, one of them being Enterprise Florida, and the other one is the Miami-Dade Beacon Council. We are very proud and pleased to be working with them. Although we are a private company, we do have these great partnerships with these agencies. So the first one is Enterprise Florida with Manny Mencia. It is a public-private partnership between Florida's businesses and government leaders, and is the principal economic development organization for Florida. They have many trade grants available for Florida exports in trade shows and export plans, but most importantly, and the most innovative program for Florida exporters is a helping hand for getting online from us, which I will talk more about later on in the presentation. And then we have the Miami-Dade Beacon Council with Christine Johnson. She's a wonderful, smart lady. She's in charge of the Director of Innovation and Technology and Economic Development with the Miami-Dade Beacon Council. If you have any sort of questions about startups and co-working spaces and tech hubs, she's the person to talk to. The Miami-Dade Beacon Council's main mission is to increase jobs and investment in Miami-Dade. They have 3 pillars, but the most relevant one being for this crowd is the second pillar, which is they want to grow local companies. They are masters in connecting businesses with specific resources to help these companies succeed, and we are very happy and proud to be one of the resources. So both of these organizations recognize that digital tools are the way forward for SMEs, and that being online allows for Florida exporters to, kind of jumpstart and punch above their weight for exporting into markets that they usually wouldn't get access to. So now on to a little word about IBT Online, about who we are. IBT Online is a private business that specializes in the online sphere. We provide an online global program which includes website localization and international online marketing. We have been in business since 2002 and have served over 400 US companies and delivered over 1,000 online global programs to date. And although we are a private business, we have partnerships with 14 US states, including Michigan, Illinois, and of course, Florida. And we are very comfortable with the online sphere, and we've delivered websites for companies all over the world, in countries all over the world. So we know what we're doing, we've been recognized for it, and it's a very well-trodden road. And we've actually been recognized by Saito for the Champion of Trade Award and the Best Innovative Company Award. So we're very proud of it. And now I hand it back. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Our motto. This is something that's going to be kind of a common thread throughout, which is we strongly, strongly believe that sales, brands, and business grow globally with website localization and international online marketing. And that's kind of the message that we're trying to portray throughout the whole webinar. And now I pass it back to Susanna for today's agenda.
Thanks, Samantha. That's great. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today, we've decided really we're going to sort of split the webinar in half to try and make it more dynamic and give you as many case studies and real life situations as possible. So I'm going to do a little brief introduction about the online space internationally and what that means, and particularly with a little tiny focus on how Florida companies tend to go online and where they tend to go. And then I'm going to drill down and say, what is website localization? What do we mean by it? And what are the sort of caveats? What are the pluses? What are the minuses? How can you identify it? What are the key things that we would look for? And equally with international online marketing. Then I'm going to hand back to Samantha, who's going to talk about some Florida companies who are already using these tools to expand their overseas and export base. and some non-Florida companies as well, that you can see the different business models, the different ways of going about getting local websites for your export markets. And then finally, Samantha's going to also talk about the program that Enterprise Florida, the state of Florida, has adopted specifically for Florida exporters that you can access, which gives you resources. And we'll go through that. It's a very easy upfront program, easy to access, easy to quick to put in place, and very effective as well. We have left some time at the end for questions. And again, I would really encourage you to reach out and put some questions in the question box for us, and that way we can have a more dynamic conversation. So just starting off then, just to talk about the sort of big picture, the online picture here, some of the major numbers internationally. I guess the first one that we find very often is simply, why export? Particularly if you're an American company, it's a huge market you've got there. It's a huge, diverse market. But there comes a time in virtually every company's existence when it also says, do I need to go beyond my immediate borders? And whether you're a manufacturer or a service company, at some point, you will also aspire to do that and to look further afield. There's basically 4 headings why companies typically say, or organizations typically say you should export, and basically they go either towards the business case. They're better for your margins, better for your top line. They improve your revenue growth. They improve margins. And that sort of thing, and also innovation. Or else they're also, I guess, strategic reasons to export, and that has to do about securing, broadening your spread, making sure that you have a wider base of client base. It helps diminish risk in the long term as well. But there's a lot of studies that have been had about this, about the need for export, and how export companies that export tend to have more innovation, more better margins, and so on. So that's sort of the main thing that you'll see very often also from U.S. commercial services. And then I wanted to just get that sort of sound bite in there, again, from U.S. commercial services. If you're looking at growth, the vast majority of the world's economic growth is happening outside the USA. And similar with purchasing power. So although you might benefit as a Florida company, you benefit from the huge domestic market at your doorstep in the United States, real big growth is happening outside the USA as well. This, I think, was an interesting little slide. Just shows you sort of the key destinations and trading partners of Florida. And this is such a fantastic demonstration, and real number demonstration of how Florida just loves South Latin America. It's all about Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Peru, all these countries in South America. And then obviously as well, the big sort of known ones like China, Japan. We also have, I would say from our point of view, a lot of the small mid-cap companies we go for also look a lot at Europe, and in particular in Germany. But we do have a lot of interest in the South and Latin American countries from our Florida companies. So just giving you a picture then of that in terms of what that means online, we thought this snapshot could be useful just to have that in the back of your mind. What does it mean in terms of online South and North America? Well, that's basically about 1 billion people in total, and of which the internet penetration rate is over 2/3, is over 70% of the population use the internet actively for business and for social media, for emails, and so on. So this is, I think, the some of the big picture stuff that you'll see again and again in presentations that we have. And what's another sort of characteristic that we find very interesting is the level of mobile use and social media use. And again, we'll come up to that in a moment, and how that influences how you plan your online strategies and internet strategies. And I think the message for us, however, is really comes again and again to the same thing, is that people and companies in other markets are using the internet as much, if not the same, if not more, than you as a U.S. company is using it. And we have a lot of experience in Latin and South America about their great responsiveness they have in social media. So just because you have a great U.S. website doesn't mean that you're going to be connecting with people outside your Florida base. And there's quite a lot of statistics you'll see about this. Even consumers and businesses who are very strong multilingual still say they prefer to buy and sell in their native language. And this comes down, I think, to the trust one needs to have for that buying experience. So that's if you have a very small country, let's say the Netherlands, then you're used to having to go beyond your borders. But certainly if you're looking at the major big markets, if you're looking at Germany, at China, at Brazil, then you really should also be considering a dedicated website in that language. I wanted also to share this slide with you, just again putting the total world internet use and penetration rates. This dates from January. The latest ones I've seen actually are from August 2017, again from Hootsuite, and they were more like well over 4 billion people now using the internet actively. And again, there's a huge mobile enabled. I mean, the growth is really all coming from the mobile side. But what I think is really interesting is that out of that internet use, the rise of social media and how people are using the internet not just to look for something, but also to communicate with something. And this is something that we'll see again and again when we're looking at company strategies for online and boosting their exports. It's communication. And when we say that sort of social catching up with search, what we mean by that is that very often today in many markets, particularly mobile first markets like, say, Brazil, or Mexico, or Vietnam, or India, these are markets where people probably found the internet via their mobile phone rather than via a PC for the first time. So they're mobile first markets. In these mobile first markets, very often the social aspect of internet is actually higher than the search aspect. So when you, based in Florida, might go on the internet and you say, okay, Google, where's the best place to buy a pair of jeans near where I am? Well, if you were sitting in Mexico City, you might not go on Google. You might also go on, say, WhatsApp or Facebook and ask one of your groups. You might, as a typical user in Mexico, you could have up to 20 WhatsApp groups, all for different functions. And you could ask them about, where's the best place? What do you say? So that way, social and the social is sort of caught up with the search aspect of the internet. And again, this has major repercussions about how you structure and how you deal with your websites looking up. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what is website localization? What is a localized website? What do we mean by it? And I guess the best way I have of trying to explain that in a short webinar is really to just recap, how do search engines work? Because I guess you have to understand that search engines are localized. Google is the largest search engine in the world, but Google in the United States is very different from Google in Canada or Google in the UK. And this is, I think, it's obvious when you say Google in Germany is different from Google in the United States, because Google in Germany is in German. But even within the UK and the USA, there are big differences. Now, what is this about? Well, I guess you have to remind yourself that search engines basically have two functions. First, when you're going to search for something, the search engine returns the results to the searcher that are relevant and useful to the searcher's query. So the searcher puts in whatever it wants, and the search engine replies to that searcher. So it is client focused in that sense. And secondly, it ranks the results according to the popularity of the websites. So that means that optimizing your website really for a search engine means trying to influence both the relevance of your website and the popularity of it. So that this has a dual function. But what you have to remember is that it is market focused and client oriented. So it takes the point of view of the client, of the searcher. As I said, Google is by far the largest search engine in the world. It has over 90% market share in most of Europe and also in most of South America. The other huge ones in the world is Baidu in China and the other Chinese ones, and then Yandex specifically for Russia, and South Korea's got its own with one called Naver. So, but for most of you, you'll be working on for most markets, it's Google, but Google is, has 192 different variations of its algorithm according to the 192 different countries that Google can be found in. I wanted to give you an example of what a Google search looks like from the United States, .com, and from .co.uk. So Samantha and I were talking yesterday, and we're saying, okay, let's take something really, really simple, a consumer goods product. And so on the left-hand side of your screen, where it says Florida, that's what Samantha found when she said, Google.com, red shoes. And she got, Macy's and Nordstrom and DSW and Bloomingdale's. And then I'm sitting in Bristol in the UK, and I went to my Google, which is google.co.uk. So that's my Google here in the UK. And I did red shoes, and I got very different results. I got results according to where I am, because Google knows that I'm sitting here, and so it's focused towards me and what I need. And that's just it's maybe a silly example, red shoes, but for Samantha and I, it was a relevant example. We like our red shoes. So here is what we mean by website localization. So we've tried to regroup on one slide all the attributes that we feel are really important for a localized website. And the core message is that it's market-specific, client-focused. So that means that if you, as a Florida company, want to attract some German prospective buyers, if you stick a few German pages onto your US website and say, well, that does it, that doesn't do it. The German market will not find that. Google.de, Google in Germany, will know that your website is a Florida-based website with a couple of German pages on it. It knows that you are not relevant to the German searcher. So we've put down these 10 attributes here. It's adapted to the local language. It's optimized for the local search engine. It has the right content management. It has the right regulatory system, compliance. That's going to be very, very important in the coming year. So all of these attributes go into having a localized website. The big companies, particularly the very innovative ones, know how this is done and do it all the time and have taken real big advantage of this. Apple has over 130 websites just for Apple. That doesn't include all the ones they have for, iPads and things like that. So different. So there's 132 different websites. And then there are companies that have, grown up and been founded since the internet have really come of age, since the internet's been around, like Airbnb and Uber. And they, right from the start, harnessed the internet to grow very fast internationally right from the start. But we think that the internet is what can really distinguish small mid-cap companies. And we believe that the digitally literate small and mid-cap companies are the ones that will really succeed extremely well when they export. It will allow them to punch above their weight. It'll allow them to go head on head with larger companies. With limited resources, a localized website allows you to have a near physical presence in a local market, in an export market. Consider it as your online premise and an online staff working 24/7 for you in that export market. So what we use for our companies, how they use the websites, the social media that we organize for them, is they generate leads with them. They establish their own credibility. They build their brand and reputation through their online presence, through their localized websites. And of course, they allow also the right partners to find them, whether that's distributors or other partners to find them. And just going to get to some examples soon, but I just wanted to give you an example as well about how we see the world today for our companies. And the best diagram I could find of it was sort of like this. In the past, you had very much a binary relationship. The company had its binary relationship with each customer on a one-to-one basis. Today, it's a much more complex a mosaic, a much more complex scenario and environment for customers and for competitors and for the company. It is a customer-centric rather than company-centric world, because customers, whether it's B2C or B2B, are able to communicate with each other, engage with each other, and have a better understanding of the entire picture rather than simply looking at the direct customer company. So again, very much a customer focused, just like a localized website is. I want to give you one brief word on international online marketing and social media, because I think for us, social media allows you to reach out into these markets. So using your localized website as a springboard, then have the social media on it, which then resounds well in the local market. It's worth knowing, for example, that Facebook is available in over 100 languages. It is by far the largest social network in the world. The big exception in the world is with Russia, and also particularly with China, across several different types of platforms in China. But I think what's important is for you guys in Florida, you could just start with, in terms of your export markets, you can start with saying Facebook is, the exception of China, the one to go on for global social media. So some astonishing numbers there, over 4.5 billion people, if you include WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, and Facebook, all using these platforms across the world. Now, I wanted to turn to Samantha to give us some case studies of small mid-cap companies and localized websites. Samantha?
Thank you, Susanna. Okay, so the way that we like to kind of visually show, your US website with these little export websites kind of connected to it is with the mothership and the little ships around it. So these dedicated export websites can be multifunctional, and you can even tweak the site over time to match the current objective that you want in that market. So, for example, say you have a little export German website, and you have a huge trade show coming up, which Germany is one of the largest, has the largest market for trade shows, so it's very possible. And so a great way to optimize the trade show is, for example, 6 weeks before the trade show, you start using this localized German website to gain traffic and generate leads and showcase that you are going to be at this trade show and to come visit your booth in this place, and kind of let your target market know where you're going to be, and that you're going to, and if you have a new product that you're launching, kind of include that too. So, but the great thing about websites is that they're not stagnant. You can change what's on it depending on your objective in that market. So it's almost like a local website is having an office and a person in that specific export market, but it's obviously much more affordable than actually having one. So it's a great option for an SME. Moving on to the next slide. So localization, we get this pretty often, that some people are like, oh, I actually already have distributors in Mexico and Brazil and France, whatever it may be, so I don't need a localized website. And honestly, that can't be further from the truth. You can have, it's not an either or situation. You can have a distributor and a localized website, and they can actually be complementary. It can, you can help your distributor out, and your distributor can help you out. So we actually have a few case studies with distributors that we can really dive into. And the first one is Avionics Support Group, which was our first Florida Online Global client. So Avionics Support Group, or ASG, they sell very technical products for airlines, and they knew that their main two markets at that moment was China and Mexico, and they had distributors in both markets. But specifically in China, these Chinese reps were phenomenal salesmen, but they weren't really great on the technical side of their products, and they were talking to technicians. So there was kind of a disconnect between the technicians didn't really trust them because they didn't think that they knew what they were talking about, so they didn't really trust ASG. And that's when ASG kind of came to us and they presented us this problem, and we created two localized websites, one in China and one in Mexico. And what this did was it created a bridge for these technicians to really understand what they were selling, and it gave the salespeople a tool to be able to sell the products. And it also gave the confidence and showed that ASG was committed to the market, and it really cared about the market, and they were there for the long term, which was very important for the target markets, both in Mexico and Brazil. And because of these localized websites, they actually got their largest deal to date, which was a $500,000 airline deal with a Chinese airline, and their exports grew from 2.5 to 5 million within a few months. So it was a very drastic change. And actually, we just created, like a few months ago, a Japanese and Brazil site because they had a huge trade show in Japan coming up. They wanted to show that they were serious about the market, so they got a website. Moving on to the next case study, which is Casco Marine. Casco Marine is another private company, SME, and they just like ASG, they started with two websites with us, one in Germany and one in the UK. And since then, they've spread internationally, as you can see by the little flags on their website. So what's interesting about them is that they have a few different verticals, I think around 4. And they had the same problem among all of their distributors, that their distributors were really, really good at the installing part and the after-sales service and maintenance and kind of delivering the product, but they were not very good salesmen. They were not very good marketers. That was just not their forte, which is fine. So they found that this struggle was across every single market. So what they did was they came to us, and what we did was we created these localized websites, and we created the localized websites, and we also helped them with their international online marketing. So we did the part that their distributors kind of lacked. And it turned out to be this really great relationship where we were creating leads and customers, and then they were doing the delivery of the product. And it actually, eventually, these distributors started contributing to the blog posts because, you know, they're the ones that are out in the field. They know what the pain points are, and they're the ones who are really talking to customers. So they found that it was so successful within Germany and the UK that they actually eventually got websites for France, Scandinavia, Australia, and Mexico. So the end message for Casco Marine was you can have this really great relationship with your distributors, but there might be a place where they lack. And in this case, it was the marketing, the generating of leads, and we were more than happy to help them. The next one is Bowman Products. So Bowman Products is another SME, a private company, and this one was actually family owned. And what's interesting about Bowman Products is that they have so many target markets. They just sell, they just have so many products. They sell to the public sector, the private sector, food manufacturers, schools, art supply stores, butchers. They just had too many, and it was just huge, and it was hard to it was hard for them to provide the same amount of resources to each and every distributor. So maybe they created a flyer or something for one distributor, and then the other distributor would get upset because they didn't have like an equal playing field. So what we did was, by providing these localized websites and doing their international online marketing, what we did was we kind of helped them coordinate and make equal the resources available to all their distributors. It allowed Bowman to centralize and organize their marketing in each and every market, and so that each vertical can get access to the same resources. So it actually allowed Bowman to take control of their brand and also see how they were performing. Another thing that it helped Bowman do was before, in order to find distributors, they would actually go to trade shows and try to seek out distributors, but now they do that through their website, and they still go to trade shows, but in that case, they're meeting the distributors. They already kind of found the ones that they were interested in, and that's when they got to meet them and decide which ones to go with. So, you know, trade shows are expensive. You want to optimize your time there, and they did so by finding distributors beforehand and then meeting them there. Then the last thing that it did was it allowed Bowman to have visibility to the end client. So the way that Bowman worked before was their distributor was the person who met the client or the customer and sold the product, gave the product to the customer, and Bowman didn't really have a connection with their end customer, and they didn't really like that. So through these localized websites, their customers were actually directed to their website that was for that specific market. And then Bowman would let their distributor know, and their distributor would actually give the product back to the customer. So their distributor actually acted almost like a logistics provider, rather than what they were doing before, which was being kind of the face of the brand. So then at that point, by having these localized websites and international online marketing, they were in constant contact with their clients, their customers. They had like a finger to the pulse, I guess you would say. They knew who they were and how to kind of adapt to the markets. And the last case study that I'm going to go over is Sat Amazon. So Sat Amazon is a Florida company, also an SME, private company. They're very tiny. And what they do is they sell these satellite phones to places where they don't really have great cell reception and internet connection. But I mean, they knew where they wanted to go. They wanted to go to Peru and Brazil, as you can see by these localized websites that we made for them. But no one there knew who they were. So their problem was that they had no brand recognition. And so that's when they came to us, and we created these 2 localized websites with everything that Susanna talked about before, including the search engine optimization part, so people could actually find them online and research the terms and find their products. So their issue was not so much with distributors, but with the brand recognition, with showing their face to the markets. And these are only a few case studies, but we have helped, as I said in the beginning, a ton of companies, and we've helped, for example, Eurodental. They have an e-commerce platform, so we have that capability. Some of them wanted brand recognition, others wanted just to kind of feel out the market. So there are various things that we can use these websites for in your target markets. And you know, we would be happy to help companies expand into new markets. So the last part of this presentation is a helping hand. And what we have, the specific program that we have for Florida is the Florida Online Global Program. And what's most important about this slide is that we want you to get visible with website localization and increase your local credibility and trust. What this program does is what our mantra says. We want to grow your sales, your brand, and your business online globally in your target markets through website localization and international online marketing. That's what we want to do. And we do that through 2 options. The first one is option A, which delivers 2 country-specific websites. So whichever target markets that you want to go into, whether it be, Canada and France, China and Brazil, whatever the case may be, we fully localize your top 2 international websites for your top 2 international target markets, and it includes everything that you see on the right-hand side, everything from domain names to if you have an e-commerce platform, we can link it back to your US website. We do the initial search engine optimization. We set up reporting, and your websites would have 12 web pages and 2,000 words, and it would be completely localized and translated. So as you saw in the sat Amazon, one website had a picture of Machu Picchu and the other one had a picture of Rio. So we completely localize it to your target markets. And what's great about this option A is that half the cost is covered by Enterprise Florida. So although the online global option A is $12,000, you automatically get $6,000 from Enterprise Florida because of our partnership, and which means you're only paying $3,000 per site, which is, I mean, if you've ever had like a pamphlet or something translated for a trade show or gone to a trade show, I mean, this is a great deal. And then moving on to option B. So option B includes everything that option A does, but you can expand into more markets. So like you're not limited in just 2 markets. You can expand to 5, 6, 10, whatever it may be. And we also, depending on the scope of work, so depending on the amount of words that you have, the amount of pages, if you want it to be e-commerce enabled, if you want a portal for your distributors, if you want an app, whatever the, the nuts and bolts, like the extra stuff that you want is what the price would be. But no matter what, you are automatically qualified for a $6,000 grant from Enterprise Florida. And our pricing strategy, we have a cost calculator, so it's very process driven. And that option also, we can talk about the international online marketing part of it, which is search engine optimization, social media marketing, content management, and also reporting and analytics. So that's just more a complete program. So I know we threw a ton of information at you guys, and you might be wondering what the next steps are. So, I mean, I might be a little biased, but I would say to contact me first. And there's my information. Feel free to call me or email me with any additional questions that we're not able to get to at this webinar, or maybe you're eating lunch and you feel inspired after, whatever it may be, just shoot me an email or give me a call. And if you want more information, we have a Florida dedicated webpage where we have all of our success story videos. We have some trade shows that are coming up from Enterprise Florida. Just a really good resource overall if you're a Florida exporter. There's also, I would also suggest for you to contact your local trade representative from Enterprise Florida. There's a list of your trade reps depending on where you're located, and we'll be sending you this this slide deck and recording, so you don't need to like scramble for a piece of paper. But feel free to contact them if you have any questions or anything about the Florida Online Global Program as well. And also, if you're in the Miami-Dade area, the Miami-Dade Beacon Council is a phenomenal resource, and there's their information as well. Suzanne, I think we actually have time for questions.
Thank you, Samantha. As you said, this was quite a rush. There's a huge amount of information we've put together for you, but we have a little bit of time left for questions. And you will be getting a copy of this slide deck as well as a recording. So, you can go through it and have all that at your fingertips. We'll do the recording within the next 48 hours. So before the end of the week, you will be getting a copy of the recording and the slide deck. There are indeed a lot of questions have come in. I don't know if we'll have time to do them all, but we'll start. One of the very first questions I have, Samantha, here is one for you, which is, which market should I go for first? Any ideas, Samantha?
Yes, that is a great question, and one that we get pretty often. So there is usually 3 ways of going about deciding which market to go for first. You can, 1, go to the top performing markets like Germany, China, Brazil, France, Two, you can get a localized presence in a market that you're already exploring or that you're doing well in. Or three, you can get a presence in a market that you're not doing so well in, maybe one that you need a little extra help in. But either way, no matter what you do, it's just important to evaluate where your business is at, where the potential is, and have some sort of strategy in place. Don't just go for the first market that sounds good. Do your due diligence, analyze your data, and do your research, and you'll have a way better chance of succeeding if you do your homework.
Thank you, Samantha. Great. There's a couple of questions about the different option A and option B for the online global program, Samantha. So I'm just going to just field some of them at you. So there's one of the companies is saying, so if I do the option A, so in other words, 2 websites for 2 different countries now, can I qualify for another 2 countries next year?
Yes, you can, actually, which is great. Enterprise Florida has allowed us to do this. That's actually what ASG did. They first got Mexico and China, and then they got Japan and Brazil. So as long as it's not within the same year, you do qualify for 2 additional localized websites the following year.
Great, good to know. Okay, here's another one about the online global program. Can you please tell me how long does option A take to actually go live from start to finish, and how long does option B take to go live from start to finish?
Okay, so program A generally takes around 3 months to deliver from the kickoff meeting to the site launch. Program B generally takes a little bit longer just because it's more countries, so it's more content to translate and more bells and whistles usually. However, it does really depend on, we can do it in less time if the client is really good at responding emails and making decisions and just kind of interacting with our technical team. But minimum, for program A, maximum 3 months, and for program B, around 4 months.
Okay, great. Thanks, Samantha. Another one just on the online global Florida program. Are your websites secure? And how do you know, and are they compliant with all the regulations that are coming in?
Great question, and something that's super relevant, especially because we actually just had a webinar on cybersecurity. If you're really interested in the topic, I would recommend you going there. But yes, our websites are very secure. We make sure to have an HTTPS for every website, and we always do the research for the regulatory compliance for each market. So we make sure that that all of the websites will be compliant to that country's regulatory laws and everything.
Thanks, Samantha. There's a rather specific question now. Hi, we have a local distributor in Brazil, and he bought our URL, our domain name in Brazil. Is this a good idea? And can he use it, or can we get it back? That's the question.
Okay, great question. So here at IBT Online, we always recommend that you own your own domain names. It's just best practice. It avoids a ton of problems. Because what if you eventually have a falling out with your distributor? Then he actually owns your domain name, which means he kind of has control over your brand in that market, which is the last thing that you want. We've actually had this happen. This is, speaking out of experience. And it generally turns out to be kind of costly for the company because they eventually have to buy the domain name back. So, if your distributor owns the domain name, that means you're giving him or her some sort of control over your brand, and you want to have control over your brand. I know sometimes it is difficult to own your domain name in certain markets. For example, in Australia, you have to have a local address to buy a domain name, but we here at IBT Online have ways to get around it, which is why it's actually part of our program for website localization.
Thank you, Samantha. Okay, there's one here which is about return on investment. How do you great slide on ASG, but how do you measure return on investment for websites and especially for localized export websites? And if you don't mind, Samantha, I'm going to take this since we recently did a blog on return on investment ROI for websites and for international marketing. I think what's really good is just to have a strategy for return on investment analysis. It is absolutely key to any good strategy for your online presence to have a way of measuring success. And are your websites performing? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? The very first thing you need to do is set the objective. And as Samantha was saying, you can have short-term objectives and long-term objectives as well. You can say, I've got a trade show coming up. I want lead generation for the trade show. I need to find a new distributor. That's also an objective. I need to build my brand. That's also an objective. So each one of those objectives should be listed, and then say, well, what would be a way of measuring them? Would it be traffic? Would it be engagement? Would it be actual sales if I have an e-commerce site? In each case, even if it's just flow of traffic to my website or engagement with my social media, in each case, you can assign a monetary value to that factor, to that attribute, and therefore measure whether things are working or not working. And what's great about the online world is if it's not working, tweak it, change it. And it's very fast to change. And once changed, you can see if that's working. So you can try things out very quickly. But I think the most important part is to have strategies in place, to have a real view and engagement with your website. And if you are measuring return on investment of your website, it means that you're looking after your websites and not leaving them sort of to idle in the background. There's nothing more frustrating than building a fantastic website for you and then, or like, build a Ferrari and then leave it in the garage. That's not a satisfactory way of doing business. Build a Ferrari, drive it. Get your website out there working for you, leading, generating leads, prospects, encouraging your distributors to go out more, organizing your distributors, and building your brand internationally. Samantha, I am looking at the time. We said this would be 45 minutes long. We're 5 minutes over. There's a couple more questions that are in the list, and I think, though, that we're going to have to put a stop to it, but we will get back to you directly either by email or Samantha will give you a call if you put in some questions that we didn't. I can see that some of you put in questions that we didn't have time to answer, and I would encourage you, please stay online, fill out a little survey. And otherwise, happy exporting Florida companies, and thank you very much for attending our webinar.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.